The past decade of Iron Bowl games has been dominated by the team in red from Tuscaloosa. It's been 1972 since the Tigers were able to put a chink in the Crimson Tide armor. 2 block punts and 17-16 are all the Tigers have lived on in this series for 9 years. But things are different this season. For the first time since 1971, both teams enter the game with identical 7-3 records. And for the first time since 1972, the Tigers are given a realistic chance to beat Alabama. Both teams have plenty to play for. The Crimson Tide's hoping to restore some pride to what for them has been a bad season. On the other hand, Auburn has the motivation and that hungry desire to end Bama's domination in this bitter rivalry.
Our people are hungry, our fans are hungry, they're probably somewhat frustrated, our student body, our players, coaches. Everybody connected with Auburn football wants to win and wants to win mighty bad. And
I think players will conduct themselves well. I think they'll play hard, cheek to cheek, jaw to jaw. I hope students and the fans do the same thing.
The odds makers have installed Alabama a 5-point favorite tomorrow. Many feel the game is a toss-up. No matter, the national TV audience should be well entertained. Kickoff from Birmingham's Legion Field is 11:35. The Hornets make their NCAA Division I debut against Kentucky State, the team Coach James Oliver once led. He looks forward to that matchup tonight, but he also looks forward to a possible matchup with crosstown foe AUM on Saturday. The Senators play in tonight's second game of the Hornet Classic against Birmingham Southern. AUM and Bama State haven't met on the basketball court in over a year now. And Oliver admits if both teams can win tonight, he looks forward to an ASU-AUM rematch.
I am, like AUM is, and like all the fans in the city of Montgomery are looking forward to a matchup between those two. I just feel like we're capable of being in the finals, and we're going to do our part to be there. And I don't wish anybody any bad luck, but I certainly hope they win and hope they're in there. It will make everything good for everybody that really wants to see the matchup.
Alabama State plays Kentucky State tonight at 7 in the first game of the Tip-Off Classic at Dunn Arena. AUM and Birmingham Southern meet in Game 2 at 9 o'clock. The winners collide for the championship Saturday night at 8, and Montgomery basketball fans are hoping it'll be Alabama State and AUM.
Randy Tex Cobb will take a 16 3/4-pound weight advantage into the ring against Larry Holmes tonight at the Astrodome. At the weigh-in, most of the excitement and big crowds that usually follow were not present.
217 and a half. 234 and a quarter. You make a lot of noise when you fall.
The promoters stand to take a bath on this one. Late this afternoon, ticket sales were reported to be only 15,000. They had anticipated 45 to 50. And in the Astrodome, 15,000 looks more like 10 hands of bridge.
Larry Holmes in white, his 13th title defense. This action taken from round number 9. In round 9, Holmes in white landed 36 shots to Randy Tex Cobb. Cobb barely able to make any retaliation at all. For Larry Holmes, who now becomes 41-0-0 with 30 knockouts. It was not a hard fight. As a matter of fact, it was probably one of the easiest title defenses he has ever had. Nonetheless, Cobb took as much punishment as any boxer has ever taken in any one title fight. For 15 rounds, and this in the 15th round, Larry Holmes continued to pound away at Randy Tex Cobb. 15 rounds of punishment, a unanimous, one-sided decision. Larry Holmes, his 13th title defense as he remains the heavyweight champion of the world. I'm George Michael for NBC News.
First quarter, there's no score in the game. Nebraska in their home red. This is quarterback Turner Gill. He goes 14 yards on the option play. It's 7-0 Nebraska. Now the Cornhuskers tried some trickery. Turner Gill, the bounce pass to Irving Fryer. He throws downfield to Mitch Krenk, who makes a beautiful catch. That set up another Nebraska touchdown. Still in the second quarter, leading 14-10. Doug Wilkening scores his second touchdown of the game. The Cornhuskers go up 21-10. but Oklahoma came back in the third quarter, trailing 21-10. This is freshman running back Marcus Dupree. He's off to the races. Dupree down the left sideline, 86-yard for the touchdown, cutting the Nebraska lead to 21-17. However, Nebraska comes back. It's Roger Craig. Goes the left side for the touchdown. That puts the Cornhuskers up 28-17. Trailing 28-24. Time running out in the game. Quarterback Kelly Phelps is intercepted by Steve Strasburger. Strasburger will take it down to the 1-yard line. Nebraska goes to the Orange Bowl. They win the Big 8 championship by defeating Oklahoma 28-24. I'm Michael Stone reporting for NBC News.
Well, we got started with Auburn University. A man came by and wanted us to start raising some trees, and so from that, well, we started experimenting, seeing how they would do, and cedars, and then we just kept on. Just like we had so many customers, we didn't want to turn them down, and we made a lot of friends out here.
Esby and his brother used to haul their trees to Montgomery in a wagon drawn by mules, and sold the goods right off the wagon for about 7 years. He says he's seen a lot of changes since then. Mr. Adams says customers used to want painted trees, but now they've gone back to natural trees. He also says prices have changed since he first got into the tree selling business.
If you got $4 or $5, you were making big money off of it.
How about nowadays?
Well, it's just about 3 times that much, 3 to 4 times. Just about like an automobile. You buy an automobile $500, $600, you pay about $10,000, $11,000 for one now.
The Christmas tree operation has remained a family affair down through the years. Now most of the help comes from nephews and cousins. As for Esby, he says his days for selling trees and making the annual trip to Montgomery are numbered.
I'm right at the point now that I don't know where I'll come back next year now.
Why is that?
Well, it takes a young man to run this, and I'm getting a little bit on the old side now, so I think I'm just about retired.
Mr. Adams says they'll start hauling the trees in next week, and even though this might be his last year, he thinks the business will stay in the family.
He came in and ordered the female clerk to open the cash drawer and give him the money. Pointed the sawed-off rifle or shotgun at the clerk in a threatening manner, at which time she opened the register and gave him the money, and he fled the scene on foot.
The Farm Bureau monthly food price survey showed food prices in the state dropped almost 3% from October to November, chalking up the largest single-month decrease in the survey history. Pork showed the largest drop, 5.5%, while beef was down 2.7%, produce down 1%, and dairy products down 0.2%. There was also some good news for some prospective home buyers. The State Housing Finance Authority agreed Tuesday to sell another $100 million bond issue to finance home mortgages. Authority Chairman Edgar Edwards says the market for homes has opened significantly since interest rates have fallen to 12%. Mr. Edwards did say, however, he was surprised the authority's first $100 million in bond money was grabbed up so fast. He says he expects the second bond issue to carry a similar 11.25% interest rate. The new members of the state legislature gathered for the first time at the state capitol Tuesday. In an organizational session, the House and Senate members discussed plans to redraw legislative districts in the state as instructed by a federal court order. Under a plan submitted by black lawmakers, at least 2 new black Senate seats could be formed, while the current number of black House seats would likely be maintained. However, it appears there may be sufficient opposition to the plan to block it, leaving it up to the federal government to redraw district lines if a plan cannot be accepted by next March. Governor-elect George Wallace and his staff continued transition planning this week, meeting with members of the James administration about the status of the state mental health department and the prison system, both of which are under federal court orders to improve their facilities. Meanwhile, in federal district court in Montgomery Wednesday, 8 of 12 men indicted in a kickback scheme following Hurricane Frederick pleaded guilty to those charges. The men have been accused of inflating the cost of setting up disaster relief mobile homes in the Mobile area in 1979. Dave Rickey, WSFA TV News.
Officials say 20 to 25 people were at this home near the Shellhorn community of Pike County Thanksgiving Day when Henry Bean was struck in the head with an axe and killed. Pike County Sheriff Harold Anderson, who was the first to reach the scene, says his office was notified at 6:19 p.m.
I drove from the yard and my light shined on a subject laying flat on his back out in the open yard. 2 or 3 people standing back from him. And I got out and asked one of the girls that lived at the house who it was, and they told me.
Alvin Hilliard, who lives in the house with his parents and family, was arrested and charged with murder. Deputy Bob Bradbury investigated the incident and says it started with an argument between the suspect's sister and the deceased over who was going to the store.
After that, it just escalated onward, where the suspect's brother, or rather the suspect himself, had gone back into the house after considerable argument and picked up an axe off the back porch, exited through the rear of the house, and came around to confront the deceased man in the front of the yard.
Sheriff's Department officials say 5 people witnessed the incident. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News in Pike County.
Barbecue, hot mustard, sweet and sour.
Honey, too. Because you deserve a break today. Chicken cut McDonald's way.
The federal judge decided the public and advertisers deserved a break. But what kind of a break? Maybe the right to see even more dishpan hands? Or work up a thirst for the right cola? Television's largest trade group, the National Association of Broadcasters, limits the amount of advertising that comes into the public's homes, and although the code is voluntary, it's widely followed. Now that the courts have banned this kind of self-regulation, there should be no stopping the flow of commercials, right? Wrong, says WSFA's station manager, Chuck Whitehurst.
If we load up our programs with commercial after commercial after commercial, people will stop watching. In addition, our advertisers deserve some degree of separation between announcements. If we ran 10 commercials back to back, I really don't think the 6th one in a row would sell anything.
Mr. Whitehurst says the major networks might slip 1 or 2 extra commercials into expensive shows like NFL football, but overall he doesn't expect to see much more advertising. The federal judge reasoned that controlling the amount of time available to advertisers artificially drives up the cost of airtime. Mr. Whitehurst says the time standards weren't meant to hurt the public, just guarantee the biggest audience. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
A coaching decision helped Alabama to their first score. Pat Dye sent Greg Pratt up the middle on 4th and 2 here. but he doesn't make it. The Crimson Tide takes over at the Tiger 49. 6 plays later, Bama's on the board. Walter Lewis with a 22-yard touchdown pass to Joey Jones, who makes a great catch while keeping his foot in bounds. 7-0 Alabama, 4:44 left in the first quarter. Alabama appeared to be driving for another score late in the first, but Joe Carter is popped by Mark Dorminey. The ball's in the air. Tim Drinkard comes up with it. And when Walter Lewis finally catches him from behind, he's at the Alabama 14, a 62-yard return. 5 plays later, Lionel James gets the call on the delay. He makes a fine run into the end zone. 13 yards in the touchdown. It's tied at 7, 54 seconds left in the first. Alabama missed another scoring opportunity on the next possession. Bear Bryant gambles on 4th and 1 at the Auburn 19, but Craig Turner stopped here short of the first down. After holding Auburn, the Tide drove it 81 yards for a field goal. The big play of the drive, this pass from Lewis to Jesse Bendros, a gain of 40 to the Tiger 27. The drive stalled, though. Peter Kim booted a 37-yard field goal, 10-7 Bama. Another turnover sets up Auburn's next score. Doug Smith hits Lewis's arm here, causing a bad pass, and Bob Harris comes up with the interception at the Alabama 25. 5 plays later, Randy Campbell scores on the keeper. 2:55 left in the half. It's 14-10 Auburn. But Bama drove for a field goal right before intermission. The big play in the 80-yard drive. This pass from Lewis to Darrell White, complete to the Auburn 15. Kim is on to boot this 33-yarder as the clock runs out. 14-13 Auburn at halftime. The second half started with Bama driving at 67 yards for a score. Lewis on the pitch to Paul Carruth. He's in from 8 yards out. A try for 2 failed. 19-14 Alabama regains the lead. 12:22 remaining in the third. After stopping Auburn, Alabama goes on a time-consuming 94-yard drive for another field goal. The play that kept the drive alive, this shift into punt formation on 4th and 1 at midfield. The Tigers were fooled and drawn offside, giving Bama a first down. But on 3rd and goal, Auburn stops Ken Coley short of the touchdown here at the 1. Peter Kim's on to boot an 18-yard field goal. 22-14 Alabama, 1:19 left in the third quarter. But the fourth quarter would be Auburn's. The Tigers get the spark they needed when Bo Jackson breaks through the line here and is into the open field. 62 yards when he's finally brought down from behind. Auburn is deep in Tide territory at the 12. But the Bama defense stiffens at the 6. Al Del Greco's on for a 23-yard field goal. Bama's lead now cut to 22-17, 9:06 remaining. Alabama failed to move the ball. Auburn takes over at their own 33 to mount the winning drive. The big play of the 14-play drive, this 15-yard completion from Campbell to Mike Edwards on 3rd and 14. Auburn with a first down at the Bama 31. Drive appeared stopped here when Jeremiah Castile intercepts Campbell's pass at the Bama 9. But Castile was called for interference, giving Auburn first and goal at the 9. On 3rd down, Campbell passes to Jackson, but Tommy Wilcox makes a saving tackle at the 1, bringing up 4th and goal. And who else would get the call but Bo Jackson? On 4th and goal, he's up and over for the touchdown. A try for 2 fails. 23-22, Auburn regains the lead, but the game is far from over with 2:26 remaining. Alabama tries to drive for the winning field goal, but Bob Harris stops this effort at the 31, picking off Lewis's pass. Auburn takes over, 1:45 remaining. As the Tigers try to run out the clock, Jackson on 3rd and short fumbles diving over the line. Randy Edwards recovers for Alabama at the 21. The Tide has one last chance. But the closest they could get is the 47. Lewis is called for intentional grounding here as Ben Thomas applies the bear hug. The loss of down and penalty put Bama on a 3rd and long at the 25. Then on 4th down, Lewis's pass falls incomplete, and the Tiger victory was complete. An emotional Pat Dye looks on as Auburn breaks the Tide's 9-year domination in the series. For Bear Bryant, it was the first time he has coached an Alabama team to 3 straight losses. Again, the final from Birmingham, Auburn 23, Alabama 22.
Alabama's skillful mix of the pass and the run kept Auburn off balance for 3 quarters. The Tide took the lead early on this 22-yard toss, Walter Lewis to Joey Jones. Alabama was driving again when Mark Dorminey dislodged the ball from Joe Carter right into the arms of Tim Drinkard. Walter Lewis finally ran him down at the 14-yard line. Lionel James then went 14 yards on a 3rd down play to tie the game. Back came Lewis and company. Lewis completed 17 of 30 for 232 yards on the day. This one to Jesse Bendros. It set up a Peter Kim field goal to make it 10 for Alabama, 7 for Auburn. Lewis going by air again. Hit as he threw. Intercepted by Bob Harris at the Bama 24. Randy Campbell passed Auburn to the 9. Mike Edwards on the reception. And then the junior quarterback ran it in. Auburn 14, Alabama 10. A bit of scrambling by Walter Lewis put Alabama in field goal range just before the half. Peter Kim came along and kicked the 33-yard field goal as the half ended, cutting Auburn's lead to just a point, 14-13. Alabama came out and drove for a score to open the second half. Paul Carruth going the final 8 on the pitch. Alabama dominated the third quarter. Lewis again mixing the pass and the run. Most of the heavy running yardage by fullback Ricky Moore, who was finally stopped, though, at the 4-yard line. On 4th and goal at the 1, Bear Bryant elected to kick the field goal to take an 8-point lead. The momentum finally swung with 11 minutes left in the game. Auburn, running surprisingly out of the I formation, got Bo Jackson loose down the sidelines. Jeremiah Castillo chased him out at the 12. On 4th and 3 at the 5, Auburn elected to take the field goal, cutting the lead to 5. Alabama 22, Auburn 17. The Auburn defense began to assert itself finally. Auburn got the ball with 7 minutes to go. Campbell directing a 16-play drive. Castillo intercepted at the Auburn 46, but was called for pass interference just before the interception. Finally, Bo Jackson on 4th and goal at the half-yard line leaped into the end zone. Auburn was up by a point, but the game was far from over. Lewis brought his team upfield, but Bob Harris intercepted, stopping the drive with 1:45 left. Auburn needed a yard for a game-winning first down, but Jackson lost the ball on the leap. Lewis again began to move toward that winning field goal, but a strong Auburn rush forced him to throw the ball away. On 4th down and long, the Tide comeback fell short on this harmless throw. Auburn had finally ended the 9-year drought. Auburn fans went berserk. They tore the goalpost down. The team finally returned to the field. 9 years of frustration vented. Toomer's Corner came to Legion Field for a little while. This is Phil Snow reporting from Birmingham.
We've got to make the people aware, the local people. This is our God-given creation, soil and water, with our population expanding all the time. If the Lord sees fit to let this world stay here, eventually we're going to run out of soil and water for the production of food, crops, and fiber for mankind. So we do have a big job ahead of us. This is a concern nationwide.
Jane Drake of the Society of Americans for Vashenko's Emigration says the Soviet government is acting out of character. As an example, she reports the government is allowing some of the Vashenko's children to travel to Moscow this week and see their parents for the first time in over 4 years. In 1978, Augustina and Peter took refuge at the American Embassy and remained there today. Ms. Drake says the leniency might last a few months, but not much longer.
Brezhnev was a moderate under Soviet standards, but under our standards he wasn't, of course, but under Soviet standards he was a moderate. Antipov was head of the KGB, and he did not become head of the KGB by being merciful.
And Ms. Drake says she has little reason to believe Yuri Andropov will let the Vashenkos leave Russia for good.
Maybe something will move, maybe something will happen during this change of physical power, but in the long run, I don't know what will happen to the Vashenkos, and I don't know what will happen to the other people.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV
on the
News.
Whole, I do not foresee things as a whole in the Soviet Union improving.
It was Bama getting on the board first in this Iron Bowl. Walter Lewis to Joey Jones from 22 yards out put the Tide up 7-0. With Alabama deep in Auburn territory, the Tigers make a break. Joe Carter hit here by Mark Dorminey. The ball squirts in the air. Tim Drinker plucks it out, and he'll race 62 yards to the Tide 13 before Lewis can bring him down from behind. 2 plays later, Lionel James on the delay makes a determined run into the end zone. That tied the game at 7. After Bama went up 10-7, the Tigers make another break. Lewis is blindsided, and the wobbly pass is picked off here by Bob Harris at the Tide 25. From there, Randy Campbell goes in on the keeper. 14-10 Auburn. Alabama added another field goal to cut it to 14-13 at half. Bama regained the lead in the third. Paul Carruth off the pitch scores from the 8. A try for 2 was no good. 19-14 Alabama. Another field goal gave the Tide a 22-14 lead going into the fourth. Bo Jackson finally ignited the sluggish Auburn offense. He breaks clean here, dashes for this 62-yard gain, which set up an Auburn field goal and cut the Tide lead to 22-17. The Tigers then took it 67 yards for the clincher. Aided by a pass interference call, Jackson capped the drive with a 1-yard plunge, and Auburn led it 23-22. 2 late Bama efforts failed to penetrate midfield, and the Auburn celebration was on. More on the Tigers' 23-22 win over Alabama on the Auburn Football Review immediately following this newscast.
Basket is guarded by number
Thank you for what Auburn University stands for. Please let us be humble in victory and proud. Most of all, we thank you for being at Auburn. What I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you, the ones that want to, I'm going to go back out there and thank our people.
These men work at a factory that produces nothing. The nuclear waste fuel reprocessing plant at Barnwell is idle, as it has been since it was completed in 1976. These cooling ponds were built to hold 350 tons of radioactive fuel rods from atomic power plants, but they are empty. The plant was designed by Bechtel Corporation to take 14-foot-long reactor rods like this one, separate the uranium and plutonium from other radioactive elements, then send the uranium to another factory where it could be made into new fuel rods. The used rods come out of nuclear reactors from across the United States. Electric utilities and the Department of Energy see the Barnwell plant as a solution to their growing nuclear waste problem. But critics of reprocessing say the Barnwell plant would be an economic and technical failure. Their evidence, they say, is the only commercial reprocessing plant ever operated in the United States at West Valley, New York. The owner of that plant, Getty Oil, lost millions of dollars, and taxpayers are now paying more millions to clean up radioactive waste. West Valley was also designed by Bechtel Corporation, and Getty Oil produced this film to explain reprocessing after the plant was opened in 1966, a time when the future of nuclear power was unquestioned.
Spent nuclear fuel elements in ruggedly built trucks and special railroad cars head toward western New York State and the first privately owned plant in the world, built exclusively to recover nuclear fuel for future use. Here begins the story of nuclear fuel reprocessing.
But the story does not have a happy ending. In 1972, after 6 years and $42 million in losses, the West Valley plant was shut down by Getty Oil. Getty's loss was nothing compared to what it will take to clean up West Valley. Left behind were 600,000 gallons of highly radioactive liquid and sludge stored in a huge underground tank. In these pictures taken last winter, you can see the heat from the radioactive liquid melting the snow over the underground tank. And inside the plant are 163 metric tons of radioactive fuel assemblies. While the cooling tanks at Barnwell are empty, these tanks hold 615 canisters filled with spent fuel rods. The utility companies that sent the rods here refuse to take them back, and the state of New York is suing. Unless the demineralized water in the tank is recirculated, cooled, and purified, the radioactive rods would heat the cement tank to 185 degrees. The taxpayers of New York State are paying for all of that. No one knows what will happen to the radioactive fuel rods, but other parts of the West Valley plant are being cleaned up at government expense. And the Reagan administration has begun pushing for federal funds to put the Barnwell plant into operation. Allied General, the owners of the Barnwell reprocessing plant, want to sell it and have said they would not operate Barnwell even if the government were to financially support reprocessing.
A vice president of Allied Chemical, which owns Barnwell, says the company really wants out of the business. In that respect, Allied officials are like those at Getty. A Getty executive was smiling the day his company was no longer responsible for the reprocessing plant at West Valley, New York.
NFS no longer will be in possession of the center at West Valley.
That was in February of this year when the U.S. government took control of West Valley and began planning a massive cleanup effort.
Okay, we're ready.
The first small steps of that cleanup are being taken as radiation experts suit up and go inside the reprocessing cell to see how much radioactivity is lodged in the cement walls and piping.
This is where reprocessing actually took place.
This is where uranium was removed from the product stream.
The taxpayers of New York State are paying 10% of the cleanup. The rest, 90% of the bills, get paid by the United States government.
Under the direction of the president, I've been going around trying to clean up some of these little places that are thorns in our side and thorns into the future development of nuclear energy, like West Valley.
The cleanup at West Valley will cost at least $400 million. Engineers predict the cost could go to $1 billion. But the use of tax money for the cleanup operation at West Valley was only one issue. Some people who live near there are concerned about safety and health. Like Barnwell, there are farms surrounding the West Valley plant.
I mean, we have to make a living here. If our milk is contaminated and say they come around and say you can't ship any more milk because you've got too much strontium-90 in it, what happens to the livelihood of these people in the area? Has that been considered in this at all?
The manager of the government cleanup promises caution will be taken when 600,000 gallons of radioactive liquid and sludge are removed from an underground storage tank.
Anytime you're working with radioactive material, there is a hazard. If the material gets away, it can contaminate areas. So one of our first priorities, one of our principal priorities is safety.
As the West Valley cleanup continues, the Reagan administration is encouraging another try of reprocessing at Barnwell. Before leaving his cabinet position, former Energy Secretary James Edwards began negotiating with a dozen corporations interested in operating the Barnwell plant. The Department of Energy has offered to buy the plutonium that would be produced at Barnwell.
We need the plutonium for our research programs. We need it to fire our breeder reactor. Now, what price do we set on that, and how much are we willing to pay for? You see, we need it, so let's set a price on it, and that would also make this whole reprocessing bit a viable commercial venture.
But critics of reprocessing say the Barnwell plant would be a financial and technical failure because the technology failed at West Valley. The reprocessing plant at Barnwell was built to do the same thing as the defunct reprocessing plant at West Valley, New York. Chop up nuclear fuel rods, dissolve them in acid, then separate uranium and plutonium from other radioactive elements. It's all done behind thick concrete walls and leaded glass because the gamma and beta rays emitted by those elements can cause cancer and genetic damage in plant workers. Remote control arms are used to repair equipment behind the thick walls so workers will not have to be exposed to radiation. But at West Valley, workers have to be sent inside areas contaminated by radiation to repair equipment. Because each worker is allowed to absorb a limited amount of radiation, hundreds of temporary workers have to be hired to do maintenance at West Valley. A report commissioned by the Department of Energy says Barnwell does not have enough remote maintenance equipment. Because of that, Argonne Laboratories concluded that Barnwell could suffer the same fate as West Valley and give the industry a further black eye. The first serious contamination at Barnwell might require the entire plant be written off.
People say that if this plant breaks down, you have to close down the whole plant. Well, that's not necessarily so because we can close down parts of it, remotely repair it, and then get it to working again.
And the president of Allied General, owner of the Barnwell plant, says more remote control equipment is not needed at Barnwell. He says workers will not have to make contact with radioactive areas because equipment in those areas will not break down.
But we aren't planning on doing any contact maintenance if we can help it, because the only places where that would ever be needed are places where maintenance does not appear to be required at all.
Because Barnwell was built to handle 5 times more nuclear waste than West Valley, Dr. Buckham says the Barnwell plant would be an economic success. But a congressman from South Carolina says reprocessing and government guarantees for the Barnwell plant would be bad economics. The reprocessing plant, which is in Congressman Derrick's district, is now a point of conflict between the Reagan administration and members of Congress. Advisors to the president have recommended the federal government guarantee $1.2 billion to corporations interested in running the plant. But Derrick and other congressmen say they will fight any allocations for Barnwell. While the Barnwell plant is in limbo, the government cleanup at West Valley is underway, and nuclear fuel rods continue to pile up at atomic power plants across the nation.
Who does that property belong to?
It belongs to Norwood Canoe. Had a whole bunch of yellow jackets that they had to kill.
Out there in that area, in one particular area that I know of, since I've been out there for the last 18 years. In particular, I haven't called it to their attention because really, the county doesn't have any responsibility.
There's the people who originally own it, the developer own any lot.
Yes.
Or they individually own it.
The individual owned plus the developer. He won't cut his lease. I'm out.
It helps a lot, attitude. Yeah. Who had the same transition in that were? I think Bill Russell was in there and Rodford and
The flat rate is $12.65. The measured service rate is $9.49. That's a savings of $3.16. And while this sounds like a good deal, measured service isn't for everyone.
For the customer who makes a moderate to light number, as a moderate to light user of local service every month, then this is an opportunity to save some money.
The reduced rate includes a $5 allowance for outgoing calls measured by distance, time of day, frequency, and total usage. Measured service has been available in Montgomery for residents with 2-6 exchanges and in Wetumpka and Hopeville since July. It will be available for those with 2-7 exchanges in January and 2-8 exchanges next fall. Somerville says 10% of Bell's eligible customers have subscribed to measured service, and he says there have been no problems. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
I'll just say that if you'd have had this meeting a month ago, would people...
Governor Bill Baxley.
Speeches during the campaign, you have to plane off after the votes are counted. Whether if you lose, you don't get invited anyway. So all these out there pumping the gas. I'm hoping that we're going to get some rules changes through and some legislation through where we have the budget required, that it be submitted in advance of the legislature being there. And let your money committees in each house have their hearings before the session ever starts. And then on the first day of the session, your budget's introduced. And then the committees have a timetable.
So today is my day.
Problems facing this state the next 4 years, you can just talk on anything you want to. We have got a lot of problems facing the state. I thought I'd talk just a little bit about what ought to be changed, and I think that
Spokesman for the WA communities, Dr. Moses Clark, told Commission members residents were turning to their governmental body to solve the problems that plague their community. Problems like insufficient street lighting, lack of indoor plumbing, sewer services, recreation facilities, police protection, and an abundance of unkept vacant lots infested with snakes and rats. Dr. Clark says in a meeting with a probate judge 2 weeks ago, The group was told the communities it represents satisfies all the requirements for incorporation as a city.
There were some citizens there who requested of the judge to permit us to go as an organized group to the county commission to identify these problems and to see just what avenues were open to us to have them solved rather than incorporate. Let incorporation be the last result.
Commission members told the group that the county lacked legislative authority to correct many of their problems, but steps are being taken to locate a sheriff's department substation in or near the community, and the commission will study what could be done about the water and sewage problems. The commission is also looking into possible legislation that could lead to a countywide weed abatement program for vacant lots, much like the program operated by the city of Montgomery. Commission members say they're not insensitive to the Wall community problems, but in many cases, their hands are tied by lack of authority. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
What about Hopewell? What about Raymond?
We beat a very good UAB team, a game that we were 5-point underdogs in, they tell me in the dressing room. My players tell me that. I think that us playing badly and winning will show our players we got to go to the practice floor and do a lot of things. And we have known this, but our players didn't believe it. See, we've been going up against presses in practice and throwing a ball away and thinking, well, you know, we didn't lose a ball against presses all year last year. When we get to the game, we're going to take care of this. Well, we didn't take care of it, and you got to give them a lot of credit. They press real well.
Darryl Lockhart helped win the game.
Senior leadership. I've always wanted to be able to say that since I've been at Auburn. Say, senior leadership took care of a game. Well, he did it, and of course Charles Barkley provided some excellent passing and some strong rebounding. Odell Mosteller, another senior with 2 big baskets late in the ball game. You get that type of thing, you've got a chance to go out on a night and play badly and still win.
If you're a moderate telephone user, Measured Service can save you a little more than $3 on your phone bill. Measured Service has been available in Montgomery to customers with 2-6 exchanges and in Hopeful and Wetumpka since July. South Central Bell spokesman Tom Somerville says so far 10% of Bell's customers eligible for the service have signed up. Any complaints?
No complaints that I know of. Of course, it's the type thing that is still kind of in the experimental stages, and I guess occasionally we have some customers who actually use more local service than they thought they were going to, and maybe would have come out better with the flat rate. So some customers have gone back to the flat rate after trying Measured Service, and we encourage that, really. It's, again, not for everybody. For the person who makes a lot of local calls, talks for a long time, they're not going to be interested in Measured Service. But again, for the person who makes not that many local calls, doesn't stay on the phone a long time, limits his calls to, say, the average, which is about 4 minutes, they can come out ahead with it.
Under the plan, customers have a $5 allowance for outgoing calls, which are measured by distance, time of day, frequency, and total usage. In January, Montgomery customers with 2-7 exchanges will be eligible for Measured Service, and by next fall, customers with 2-8 exchanges will be able to subscribe. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
saying, hey boy, and he started growling. We have got a lot of problems facing the state. I thought I'd talk just a little bit about what the people that receive the services, the agencies that administer the money, and the taxpayers that pay for it. If we don't do something to help our farmers, and of course that's a problem that's national in scope, but we can certainly try to do something about it on a state level, and maybe it just may turn out that we'll come up with some kind of solution that'll be so good and work so good here, somebody nationally will seize on it and make it into effect on a national basis. But we have, and I thought it was important that the chairman of both Finance and Taxation and the chairman of the Rules Committee basically share my philosophy that we've got to help agriculture and help people and help conserve our resources and at the same time develop and make productive our lands.
The Save a Life organization is just what the name infers, a pro-life group interested in helping pregnant girls who don't know where to turn.
How needed is the Save a Life program?
Desperately needed. We're finding out. We've only been here 8 months, and the longer we're here, the more we found out how necessary it is, that there is no other place, seemingly, for girls to go if they have any idea of not having an abortion. And it's also necessary that we be here in order to give them the facts on what the abortion really is, so that they can make a good decision about what they're going to do.
A film is shown to each girl who comes in, giving both sides of the abortion question. The Save a Life counselors say they don't try to convince the girls to do any one thing about their pregnancy. They say they're just there to help. But once a decision is made, then Save a Life workers will help girls make their plans. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Historical Commission, Alabama Bureau of Publicity and Information, Maxwell Airport.
This is one of those grants. There are 2 additional ones.
Films, photo exhibits and slide programs, to walking tours, crafts, demonstrations, and lectures. The festival is being planned and coordinated by the...
...that we're here to announce today. I would like to reiterate what effort to bring the Alabama History and Heritage Festival to fruition. This program started as a...
Better understand our past, we can better understand our present and our future. This time I would like to... And I present that to you and certainly hope that this causes people to be more appreciative of that. And let there be...
Emery, we appreciate all the help you give
glad
us
to
with
do it.
this.
Certainly hope that this causes people to be more appreciative of the health that they have and be more concerned about the health of those that are less fortunate and have a need for a kidney. And maybe this will cause that attention to be drawn to it.
The state retirement systems is in the business to make money to fund retirement plans for state employees and teachers. One of the more profitable ways of making enough money is through investments. For the last 7 years, the Retirement Systems has invested some of its money in home loans. Today, RSA Secretary-Treasurer David Bronner says an agreement has been finalized, paving the way for one $25 million loan program, and work is underway for a separate $40 million program. The $25 million program was worked up with the Birmingham Builders Association and will provide conventional home loans for new and existing homes in the Birmingham area, an interest rate of about 12.4%. The $40 million loan program is being worked up now for lenders statewide. Unlike the Housing Finance Authority low-interest loans, which are keyed to special income brackets, the RSA-funded loans are wide open.
But from our point of view, what we do is by committing it directly into the state, we provide that home builder or that individual with the money available to be able to have the mortgage. There's a lot of competition out there, but basically what we try to do is we are trying to develop a portfolio that emphasizes Alabama whenever we can. Broker.
Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
We've got everything from real estate financing, etc.
Save a Life counselors give girls answers to their questions about abortion. But since they're a Christian pro-life group, they offer help only in finding medical care and financial aid if the girl wants to go through with her pregnancy. They don't suggest clinics for abortion. But they do give free pregnancy tests and find homes for girls if their families don't want them while they're pregnant.
Last month we had 50 girls to call, and over half of those actually came in to get a pregnancy test. We counsel the girls as to the real facts of abortion, what medically, physically, emotionally an abortion might do to them. We give them those facts. We give them the facts on the development of the baby that they're carrying if they turn out to be pregnant from the pregnancy test. We counsel them as to repercussions that might occur, and then we tell them what we're able to do to help them to get through the pregnancy.
The hotline number for Save a Life is 271-0002. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
He'll be here next Tuesday, and he especially wants to meet with you, Doug. And his program's gonna be at Lanier High School at 7:30.
Delivery mic and one mic up to the star. The rest of it will be going.
I think all this should be done around, like we've been doing Sunday or Saturday or Sunday beforehand.
Yeah, Hatcher's call.
I just leave it up to Hatcher. Hatcher's a man.
What you got that Don Holson back? He's assistant.
And the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written. Mr.
Great families as the Medicis and the church have served as patrons of the art, contribute to an improvement in the quality of life in our community. Each of us, kept by example, and I urge each of you to think of on your. Certainly we have been amply rewarded tonight in this very fine evening. And my associates at Blunt Inc. and my family and I are deeply grateful for this award.
On July 28th, WSFA TV first reported what appeared to be a problem with two pay raises given Attorney General Charles Graddick during his term of office. The state constitution makes it clear in two places that the Attorney General and other constitutional officers cannot receive a pay raise during their term in office. However, a check of records revealed since 1979, Mr. Graddick received two raises totaling about $20,000. State Finance Department officials said a state law tying the Attorney General's salary to that of Associate Justices of the Supreme Court justified the payment. But Attorney Julian McPhillips wrote Mr. Graddick and asked for the return of the money. And later, after no response, Mr. McPhillips filed a lawsuit in an effort to force repayment. Governor Fob James then asked the Supreme Court to issue an opinion on the legality of the raises. Subsequently, Montgomery County Circuit Judge Sam Taylor stayed the McPhillips lawsuit until the Supreme Court could issue an opinion. Julian McPhillips contends that almost 4 months is a long time for the taxpayers to wait, and he's decided to try and get the Supreme Court to order the Circuit Court suit to proceed.
I'm simply asking the Supreme Court now to ask the Circuit Court to proceed with the lawsuit that I filed so that the people of Alabama can get a hearing and a determination on whether or not Attorney General Braddock has violated the state constitution, as I believe he has, in taking over $20,000 in extra pay raises.
The High Court is expected to answer Mr. McPhillips next week. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Longtime Wallace friend Taylor Hardin was the governor-elect's spokesman today. He said he'll act as liaison for Mr. Wallace with these private sector volunteer task forces. One task force is made up of 25 Birmingham area people who will try and act as a referral agency for people facing financial crises this winter.
Any time within a multiplicity of programs, some things are going to fall through the cracks. If you've got them all together, then you are not going to have this falling through the crack syndrome, I don't think. If it's something that the unemployment agency can't pick up, maybe the Salvation Army can. If they can't, maybe United Way can. If they can't, perhaps the Red Cross.
Mr. Hardin says this task force may act as a prototype for task forces statewide to help areas with high unemployment. The other task force is made up of more than 50 private sector business people who will come up with suggestions on how the governor can help the state in its economic recovery effort. The task force will offer suggestions in the area of human services, education, government operation, and economic development. Both task forces will submit their reports by Inauguration Day, January 17th. Wallace aide Elvin Stanton says the governor-elect has put cabinet appointments on the back burner in an effort to organize these task forces. Mr. Stanton took a shot at the James administration in explaining Mr. Wallace's effort to take his time at naming cabinet appointees.
If you rushed into appointing, say, a finance director, you could end up having 6 or 7 of them.
The Wallace transition team has more meetings with James administration officials next week. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
I might make...
About 50 people gathered tonight at a church in Montgomery to mark E.D. Nixon's 50th anniversary, 50 years of involvement in the civil rights movement. Mayor Johnny Ford of Tuskegee credits Mr. Nixon with engineering the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, and he made it clear that Mr. Nixon was always and remains a fighter.
But he's always stood tall and his head has been unbowed, for he has stood firmly with both feet upon what he felt was right.
Many in this crowd feel that Mr. Nixon has not gotten his fair share of recognition. No shy man, Mr. Nixon himself says if he had kept his mouth shut, there would have been no civil rights movement. Mayor Ford says this week-long tribute will teach many about Mr. Nixon's sacrifices.
And so hopefully this week of honor will not just be a celebration for a man, but for his movement, for what he lived for and what he worked and struggled for down through the years.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Made